Okay, can everyone hear me? Someone give me a thumbs up. Okay, we're going to start. So thank you guys for being part of this webinar. The first thing that I want to say is I hope you all are staying safe and doing everything to keep you and your family safe. We should all be doing that. But we're here to talk about tenants and our shopping centers and the rent requests that are pouring in. I've been speaking to many of you and some that are not on the call, large companies, small companies, mom and pop, private owners, public owners. On Monday, one of my peers had 42 requests from tenants, and on Tuesday, they had over 175 requests. That was a large company with over 400 assets. So that's just to put into some perspective. Many of you know I just have a small portfolio of 6 shopping centers. I've had 8 requests in the last 2 days. So what I want to do today for the layout is I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts that I have personally and that I've been discussing with some of my friends. And then I'm going to share with you some actual requests that came in for me and what I've told those tenants and what I'm doing about that. And then at the end, I'll open it up for questions. You can either put your questions in the chat box and I'll read it, or you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask it verbally. I believe we can do that, or Josie will unmute you guys at the end and then you can ask if you want. And I'll stay on as long as you need me to answer any questions. I think that my comments will go probably about 20 to 25 minutes. So the first thing that I want to talk about, and obviously our perspective and our position is going to definitely have to do with the ownership of the property. So if you have a successful property, you may have a different position than if you have a weaker property. If you're a leasing agent or a property manager for a third-party client, obviously the strategy will be different based on the client's perspective. If you have a property in a weaker demographic market versus a stronger demographic market, so each case is going to be different. It's going to be a case-by-case basis. So, there won't be one shoe that fits all, right? One whatever that saying is. The good news is I've seen by 3 or 4 different sources today, CBRE did a global call that one of my friends posted some results from that call, that China seems to be coming back in full force. I've also seen that in 2 other communications. And again, you never know if what's true, what you're reading or hearing, but if China's coming back already, I think that's good news for us. I know a bunch of us, we talked about today, is it April or May, or is it July or August? Big difference if we're back in April or May versus July and August for our tenants, our small mom and pops. But what I think a week ago, so some of you that know me, in full disclosure, know that I'm kind of a tough cookie as far as things like this. I kind of hold a hard line. And I woke up this morning thinking about how long does it take to backfill a mom and pop tenant today? And based on a survey of my peers, the average seems to be about 4 to 6 months to backfill a mom and pop tenant, if you can find them, right? So based on that, and based on understanding what goes into backfilling a mom and pop tenant, the downtime, the commission, the TI, et cetera, that kind of permeated my thinking most of today before this call. So, so I'm hearing now, just on a side note, I guess there's a lot of people that aren't being able to register. So we're going to continue, and then we're recording this, so we'll just have to put this out, the recording. So when you're thinking about backfilling tenants versus helping tenants through this rough time, that will be a decision you as landlords will have to make depending on your position, your mortgage payment, the health of your center, et cetera. It's also hard to figure out who are the tenants that really need the help versus who are the tenants who are trying to take advantage. And that's with the rental assessment application that I'm going to send out to all of you that we've crafted after this call. I think that getting information is key to trying to figure out who are the tenants that need help and who are the tenants that might be trying to take advantage. For those of us that have smaller portfolios, we probably know most of our tenants. For those of you that have larger portfolios, much harder to do. As far as rent statements, I've heard from people that those of us that still send rent statements, we are not sending rent statements out for April yet. And I've heard a lot of people are not doing that. Kind of in your face type of thing. We're waiting on that. National tenants. The majority of this call is I'll be focusing on mom and pops, not nationals. And a lot of my peers have said we all need to, bound together and not help out the nationals. Again, I think that is a case-by-case basis. I do think that for this call, I want to focus on the mom and pops. I did get my first national tenant letter today. The request was for 90 days of 50% rent and CAM. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that at this point. They do have co-tenancy provisions, and another one of my peers has said that co-tenancy provisions are being floated out there with the national tenants. So that's definitely something to be considered to review in your lease. What are the terms that you have in specific leases, especially for those that are asking for help? One thing I am still very firm on, if I have a tenant that is in default currently, before this happened, I would not be entertaining any kind of assistance for that tenant. I think that if they were in a prior default or a problem tenant, owed rent, owed CAM, whatever it was, they were in default. I don't think that, personally, I'm not jumping up and down to help that tenant. The application, which you guys will see when we send it to you, asks for a lot of things. I ask if what they want. I want to know what their ask is. I don't want either myself, my property manager, I don't want to be offering something. I want to see what they're asking for. They may just ask for a month or two of half rent. We don't know what they're looking for. I ask them, how are they going to use the abatement or deferral, in whatever manner we decide to give it to them, what are they going to use it for? Now, are they going to tell the truth? Who knows? But I want to know what their plans are and what they're thinking. My goal for my mom and pop tenants is, unless the government shuts them down like a local gym, I want them to try to be as creative as possible to stay open, because I think that helps them and I think that helps us. So if I can give a couple extra temporary exclusive parking spaces for Domino's, or for my sub guys, or for anybody that's trying to be creative with their takeout menus for my restaurants, that's what I want to do. If I can add, I just thought about this also today, putting signage out on the street, advertising which of your tenants are still open for business. I think Starbucks in my properties have closed all their dining, but they're still open for takeout and for pickup. So adding possibly some signage, if your municipalities allow it, to help bring in the traffic, because people might not know that they're open. I'm asking for, if I don't already get the sales in the application, I'm asking for the sales if I don't already have them. And then even for the ones that I have, I want them up to date, especially the last 4 weeks. And if we make a deal, I will go forward wanting week by week sales going forward. I ask for, I'm not asking for a credit check. I had that in I think the last, recession, we asked for a credit check. I think that I'm not doing that. I am asking for personal financial statements, and there's a form in the application. Also in the application, I ask, have they applied for any help or any assistance? And I've listed the SBA link, the Facebook link, and I think in Florida, we just got another grant opportunity. I've listed those 3 opportunities for people, for my mom and pop tenants to even know about. They might not know about it. And as we're hearing that, we are sending that out to our tenants via email and encouraging them to apply. If I make a deal, I will document all deals in writing, and I will include a confidentiality clause, which I'm also giving you. I had my attorney draft. You can have your own attorney draft it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just, and I know some of you are probably smirking like, well, what's that going to do? You can't enforce it. I'm just hoping it's kind of, puts a thought in their brain that if they do share the information, the confidentiality clause says that the deal's off. I know it's hard to enforce that. I'm just hoping that having that in there as part of the package is kind of a little reminder. Another idea that came up in my discussions was security deposits. I pretty much have 2-month security deposits for all of my mom and pops. I brought that up with someone else today as a discussion, and she said she believes the lenders have to approve us using security deposits for rents. One of my other partners is checking on that with our lenders. So I don't have the answer, and obviously you have to check with your lenders, or, I have a favorite saying, forgiveness over permission. I know, some of my friends, that my lawyers on the phone are looking at me going, no, don't do that in this time. But if I've got a tenant that's got 2-month security deposit, that might be their lifeline. And maybe, and then planning ahead and letting them refill the security deposit, over the next 12 months, 1/12 of the time. But definitely, I'm not a lawyer, so check with your lenders and do what you feel comfortable. But I like that idea. Franchisees. I did have, of my 7 tenants that requested today, one of them is a franchisee. I instructed them to go talk to their franchisor and get back to me and let me know what their franchisor is doing for them. If their franchisor does not help them, I think that should be their first line of assistance, not their landlord. Again, I want to encourage them to stay open and not close, and anything we can do to help them be creative and come up with ideas like signage, I'm there for them. Business interruption insurance. There's been a lot of discussion about this. My insurance company has said that pandemic is not covered. And then someone also else brought up, what about force majeure? If the government shuts them down like our gyms, will that? So I'm also not an insurance agent. So I think you all need to call, they need to call their insurance agents, and we need to call our insurance agents to see what our policies cover. One of my friends, landlord in South Florida, was proactive. She sent a letter to all of her mom and pops, automatically to mom and pops, not franchises, not nationals, and she automatically deferred their April rent, their March, no, I think just their April rent, and she said, you will pay it in the last 6 months of your lease, 1/6. So if the rent for April was $6,000, in the last 6 months of their lease, she will add $1,000 to their rent statement. And she was being proactive. They didn't, I don't even know if they had anyone called her. Someone else mentioned what they're thinking about doing is adding $1 to the rent, to the base rent, and calculating some kind of formula to how much deferral that they give. I thought that was interesting. I don't know, I think that would be hard to calculate. Our tenants' biggest costs are obviously the employees and the rent. I saw today that they are going to come, they are trying to do something with some sort of package for unemployment, but I don't think that helps us. I think our tenants need to keep these people employed, and that goes back to being creative. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. The chat box is going crazy. So let me share with you a few of the tenants that came to me, what has happened in my life in the last like 5 days. So it started last Thursday. Last Thursday, I had an Asian massage place call me, and she said, I'm closing and indefinitely, and I hope you're gonna help me. So what I did with her is I sent her the application package. The next day, no, nothing happened again until Monday. On Monday, one of my tenants, nail salon, who does extremely well, reached out, called me, texted me and said, can you talk? And I called him and he said, I just want to let you know I'm closing today until April 1st. I just wanted to let you know. Didn't make an ask, just wanted to let you know. He's a very successful business. He goes, because of hygiene issues, I'm closing. Okay. The next one I got was, I got a call from 2 competitive hair salons. They were together in one of the hair salons, What should we do? Should we close? I said, how are your sales? Well, we both had strong books of business this week and they're dropping like flies. I said, I cannot recommend if you close or don't close. I think that you should look at your business and make that decision on your own. And then one of them said, well, both of us have paid our March rent. So now they're together, 2 competing tenants. We both paid our March rent and we both feel we can pay our April rent. We're worried about after that. And I said, make your decision on your closing. I hope you can stay open. And we'll talk about it later. They did not ask, I did not send the application. The franchisee reached out today, a cell phone store. I responded by saying, please discuss your needs with your franchisor. That was to the franchisee. And then a home improvement retailer reached out and said, we have no traffic. We're not closing, but we can't pay our rent. And I sent them the application. Those were all of the tenants that have reached out and what I've done with each one. So those are my thoughts. Let me see. Oh, someone else said, oh, another very large company that has hundreds and hundreds of shopping centers sent out a letter to all of their tenants, I believe nationals and locals, and they said, we are so sorry that this is going on. It's a crisis for our country, yada, yada, yada. We expect you to pay rent in full, but we will not be defaulting you, or we'll be ignoring grace period or something, honoring grace periods or not paying attention to grace periods. So basically they were saying, if you can't pay rent by the 10th, we won't default you. So that was another larger company that sent something out. I think that we all as landlords have short-term concerns and long-term concerns. Long-term is obviously asset value, and that was going back to what I said at the beginning of the call. Normally I'm more tough about this, but I think if we can help these mom and pops over a month or two, I'm hoping that if we follow what happened in China, hopefully in a month or two, we are healthier and we keep them open and in business. One of the tenants that called me, I didn't mention her, so another somewhat massage place, a foot massage person called, and I literally had to talk her off the ledge. I think she had sent me a text and an email, and I'm going to close my business. I can't afford this. I don't have capital reserves. And I just said, let's talk. And she goes, I can't even talk to you. I'm just so upset. And so I waited 24 hours and I called her and I said, are you still open? She said, I'm still open. but business is down significantly. And I'm saying, okay, well, we'll work through this. She's a great tenant. She does about $330,000 in business, 1,200 square feet. I'd hate to lose her, but she was panicking. So I talked her off the ledge. I haven't sent her the application. She hasn't asked, but she was just ready to throw up her hands and end her business, which would have been very not good for me as a landlord, for our shopping center, or for her. So, so I think that as we are getting the barrages, I can't imagine, Chris Russ and I talked about, a month ago, we were talking, do we need waiver people in our companies? Because we have to deal with so many waivers. Well, when you have a company that goes from 42 requests to 154 requests in 24 hours, the larger companies that are on the phone, the property management teams, your property managers in the field, can't obviously handle all of this. So I do think temporary teams that will handle this and can make decisions. But again, I think after we get information, I do think that there are opportunities for us as landlords to make leases healthier. So I think that if we do help tenants, if for some reason we acquired a shopping center and the prior landlord gave them 4 or 5 year options, can we get 2 of those 5-year options back? Certainly, if we have tenants that don't provide sales, that 100% should be a non-negotiable if we proceed with helping out the tenant. Maybe there's a very wide use clause that we can narrow down that would be helpful for us going forward. So I do think that we can take these situations and create opportunities to strengthen our assets on the long term as we help our tenants on the short term. Before I go to questions, Chris Russell, the Chief Rent Reduction Officer. I don't want to create a title or a position because hopefully this is going to be done in 60 days, right? But a last thing, the ICSC today sent a letter that we all need to send to our congressmen and our representatives. It didn't take me 10 seconds. The way they gave it to us, it self-populates your information. And when it sends out, they knew which 3 state representatives to send it to. Please, please, please. We have 500 people on this call. 500 letters should be going out at the end of this call because, we are a powerful group. We do have a lot to do with small business, and we can all make a difference, I think, by sending out that letter. And if you don't have the ICSC letter, text me when we hang up and I will get it to you. So now what I want to do is, I hope that helped. I want to start answering some questions, either if you want to unmute yourself or I can answer them from the chat, I think. Figure out how to do it. So any questions? Data verification must be part of the application process. Trust but verify. Absolutely. Part of my application is 3 months bank statements. I put in things that hopefully we can verify, but if any of you have any great ideas of how to verify better than what you see in my package, email it and I'll send it out to all of you. And obviously this application is for you guys to take and amend in whatever manner you see fit for your own assets. So someone just said, did we get the force majeure letter from Subway? And everyone's writing, for everyone that's got Subway as a tenant, I guess they sent out a letter. I don't have Subway, but they sent a force majeure letter. So I think that you guys need to ask your attorneys on what to do about that. I don't want to represent, myself as an attorney. What type of time frame do you think is acceptable for the landlord to respond? Oh, good point. Another one of my friends, larger tenants, larger landlords, said that they are not making a decision for 30 days. I think that is too long, personally. Chris, what do you think about that? I mean, I know things are changing and maybe we can't make a decision, but I think we could lose tenants quickly if we don't answer them in 30 days. So personally, I'm going to be responding probably once they get me the application full of all of the information I've asked for, which is going to take them a few days. And what I found the last time we went through this is the serious people fill it out and the people that are trying to take advantage don't, because it's work. They have to compile information and they have to work. So I do think for me, once I get a full package, I will respond within 24 hours. I'm not going to wait 30 days because I don't want to wake up in 30 days and have 4 or 5 vacancies that I could have done something about. Mortgage companies are currently considering that. Yeah, so other people have said that they've asked their mortgage companies to go to interest only. Go for it. I know. Let me see if I can unmute you all. Manage purchase. So now I've unmuted everybody. You can talk at once. So mute yourself if you don't want to talk. And if you want to say something, you can say something. So my friend Yoel said to everybody, remember, we need to get lender consent if you do a modification. So lender consent if you want to do a modification.
Right.
The lender requires
Don't
it.
tag her, whatever you do.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
How do you verify sales figure tops?
They socially apart, but you know, live your whole life.
Well, if they've got insurance, business insurance, they might be able to replace their income.
Yeah,
That's what Laverne was encouraging a lot of them to do.
yeah. Sure, insurance, so they don't have to pay for anything. So
Yeah.
you fight and get it, so,
But that's what they were encouraging us to start with the house.
yeah,
And then they could work on,
yeah.
I think Thursday they can tell you find out.
How do you do, so how I find out if, what I do with mom and pop sales is I ask them to give me what they report to the state government. So in Florida, they have to give a certain form. That's the form I want. If they're going to lie to the state government, I want the same lie.
All our mom and pops who have crossover.
I'm trying to mute everybody, you guys.
Yeah,
And then they were favored.
yeah, yeah. Everybody except maybe Hearts. I don't know, I guess we could send it to Hearts too, but
It's not working, I'm sorry.
they're not hurting. They're making more money than anybody probably right now at Walmart. So,
I need to use this one.
I'm trying. You all.
So we just, no, we don't have someone coming back March 31st and I'm ready to drag the draft over.
Application I am, as soon as we hang up. Are you including the rent deferrals on the good guys or just on the lease for small tenants? Are you including the rent deferrals on the good guys or just on the lease for small tenants? I don't know what that means. How can you sell a mom and pop during this time? Is it worth it to try? No, you should. If a mom and pop is trying to sell their business, I don't think now is the time to do it. Have you ever heard of the vacant drive-in movie theory when it comes to whether or not a landlord, you should throw a tenant a lifeline? Have you heard of the vacant drive-in movie theory? No, I have not heard of that. Sorry. How do you decide to waive or defer rent? I think we should all defer rent. I don't think anyone should waive rent. For sure, I would only defer to the end of the term, or that's what I would do. I would only defer. I wouldn't waive at all. Sales tax. Be aware that if your bank gives you relief, it may hinder your ability to borrow in the future from that bank. Major banks keep track and often count that as a default. A default may disqualify you from borrowing from that bank in the future. That would be an important thing to check. Any other questions? We've been trying to respond within 15 days and have been communicating that. So another company said they're trying to respond within 15 days. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions that I didn't answer. I'm curious if anyone knows whether property owners can go to their banks, call your lenders. People are calling their lenders now. Some of my friends have gone from amortizing loans to interest only. I will put a link on my website for the ICSC letter. Good idea. We should all be sharing that. We should be sharing that. Our tenants should be sending that letter out. It's so easy. Earlier this week, we had a handful of tenants who unilaterally closed without calling or texting. We saw it on social media before the government shut down. Do we take a different approach to those who don't reach out? I would. I find that shocking that you had a number of tenants that closed without reaching out to you. My guess is that they were already super weak, because, I mean, that's shocking to me. My guess is those tenants were in big trouble already, and that's what happened. Yeah, this is a good question. I don't have the answer to it. If you give the tenant rent relief and then they get some grant assistance, should the landlord get benefit from that, and how do you track that? The big question is, how do you track that? I don't know how you would track that, but in my application, I say, have you applied? And if you have, what have you applied to? If someone has a great idea of how you would track that, I have no idea. I think that if the government starts giving grants to tenants, they should have their landlords sign releases like permits, because the landlords shouldn't get the shaft if the tenants do start getting some help. If rents are adjusted, don't we need to amend the leases to document? Yes. Anything you do, you should document, in my opinion. I'm sure there will be new lease language for future leases to protect against co-tenancy clauses and interruptions of business. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes in the future based on this. I believe I got all of the questions on chat. I think if you have any more questions, I'm going down to the bottom of the chat. If you guys, would you suggest deferring the rent? Yes. Can I sell the plaza during this time? No. You cannot sell the plaza during this time. If you're, in my opinion, I mean, unless you're already under contract and someone's doing due diligence, but even then, I believe that no one's selling a shopping center during this time. Get a personal guarantee with any, if you don't already have a personal guarantee, someone is recommending getting one if you give the deferral. What about the business that has been shut down by the government? Yeah, it stinks for him and it stinks for us. Same, I think everything I've just said applies to people shut down by the government and not shut down by the government. If you have a strong tenant, would you consider giving the tenant a free rent period if they exercise an option early? That's what I think. That's something that I'm probably going to be considering, but I'm concerned that they're going to want something for it beyond just a deferral. But I'm looking at all of the terms and conditions in my lease. If I'm going to do a deferral, I'm going to then look at, like I said earlier, options, annual increases, exclusives, kickouts, co-tenancies, all of that. I'm going to look at all of that. Any thoughts of what can be done to scale down in CAM? For sure, garbage. I mean, I think a lot of us have a lot of restaurants that are not doing the sales. I think right, like 20 minutes before this call, I called my property manager and said, reduce the garbage. But landscaping, in Florida, you can't you can't stop doing the landscaping. But, if anyone else has any other ideas, jump in on how to reduce CAM. I actually stepped up cleaning last week, and I usually pressure clean quarterly. And I told my property manager to pressure clean by the restaurants with hot water and bleach, just for the whole cleanliness thing. So I'm adding costs with that, with cleanliness. How would you treat a tenant that was supposed to open this month and start paying rent? I'd talk to them. They're probably going to delay their opening, and I would just delay their opening and defer the rent commencement and the opening to the end, unless it's a, I'm negotiating with Quest right now, the lab people. I think there are some tenants, I said to Kara, let's go find some tenants that want to open now. And she actually got a tenant that called her today for a temp lease, and I said, do it. So being creative and trying to figure out, will hospital uniforms be in demand, and will the uniform people want a temp store? Yeah, if tenants close without calling you, I would say the deal's off. I wouldn't discuss it. How do you not call your landlord when you're closing for business? I mean, maybe not that first day, but all of my tenants, all of them called me prior to the 3 or 4 that actually closed fully called me before. I'm going to email the application. I got a renewal done with Albertsons on Monday. Good for you. I'm waiting for Aditi's lease, and I'm hoping I get it. I'm hoping the Nationals, especially now that they're not traveling, I'm thinking, silver lining. Those managers are not out traveling, so they can get a lot of deals done. I hope. We'll see. Prospecting. So I posted this on LinkedIn, the queen of prospecting. I do think it's a little insensitive to be Facebook prospecting. I said last week, now's the time to do great, get your kids involved, Facebook prospect. Probably not a good time, but then someone else on LinkedIn said, well, wait a minute, we could reach out and, just kind of chat or be caring, not be the, the typical salespeople, maybe. I do think that we have to be careful and be thinking about, Kara was prospecting restaurants yesterday, and she goes, yeah, it wasn't going well. So we have to be thinking about what they're going through and be sensitive to that. What about upcoming renewals that we've been working on? Would you defer negotiations now? I would, because I think that those tenants that you're working renewals on now are not in the right headspace. If you can wait 30 days, I think hopefully with what we're seeing with China in 30 or 45 days, we're going to be in a much better position. So I would, kick the can on that for 30 days. If you give a tenant rent relief and then I don't know about them getting assistance from someone else. Would you advise, if you can with reserves, defer the next 3 months of rent and extend the lease by such term, possibly longer? So if they're coming up for renewal, so would you advise, if you can with reserves, defer the next 3 months and extend the lease? Keeping them calm. I think keeping them calm, if you want them in your shopping center, I do think that we are going to be part leasing agent and part counselor. We need to keep our tenants calm, and if we want them to stay. And there are people that told me yesterday that there are tenants they don't want them to stay, and this is an opportunity. That's a case by case. Asking for ongoing bank statements maybe is one way to track if the tenant received a grant or loan assistance. Well, I think loan assistance is different than a grant. I would love for them to all get grants and not really loans, because loans is just going to burden them even more. I have had 4 deals tank in the last 10 days and 3 close, with a few that will come back to life once the landlord determines whether it should give the new tenant a few more months of free rent. Oh. Yeah, we had 1 deal tank. And I'm hoping the other 2 or 3 we have on our plate are going forward. In the rental application, I'm listing the SBA link, I'm listing the Facebook link, and I'm listing a state of Florida link. I've been asked to waive rent for the next 6 months and add it to the end. I'm considering asking to be caught up on rent sooner than the end. What if the tenant fails? We don't have a crystal ball. I don't think you should be waiving rent. Waiving rent, that means not having any rent for the next 6 months, is a bad call. I think deferring, and I do think this might be something that we're doing month to month to month, unfortunately. But again, hopefully this is done in 45 days. And, you know, and there are people like the national tenant I spoke about earlier is they asked for 50% rent. So you can consider doing 50% rent, but I personally, I would only be talking to my tenants right now about April. And I know I don't have 500 shopping centers, so those of you that do can't do case by cases on this, but I don't think I would be doing this national tenant. In the event I do help them, they've asked for 90 days. Maybe I would do 60, but I'm not going to do anything certainly more than 60. I don't think that I'm going to think positive and think that we're getting back to business by that point. Okay, I think I'm seeing the same questions. Yes, I'm sending the application. Portering, yes, thank you. I do think we can reduce the portering. We don't need porters 6 days a week if we don't have traffic at our centers. Someone said HVAC maintenance contracts. I don't have any of those, but yes, that would be a good idea. What about parking lot lighting if tenants are closing early? So I keep my parking lot lights on, you know, from sundown to sun up for liability purposes. I would not reduce my parking lot lighting. Reduced frequency of sweeping. Turn off utilities and vacancies where weather allows. Hold off on minor repairs. I like the sweeping reduction, lack of traffic. I keep my utilities on in my vacancies. If I have 20 vacancies, I don't, but I only have 2 or 3, and I keep the lights on at night because I'm hoping someone will leave space for me when they see it at night. There's a fantastic tool for disinfecting patios, and there's a link. This is all, you guys should check some of these chats. It's a Clorox system and a mist. Is an individual on a lease with a shell company personally liable on the good guy for the rent deferral? Well, if there's any doubt, first of all, talk to your attorney. If there's any doubt, then I would make them sign personally for the rent deferral. Okay, have your porter be your eyes and ears. Since that's what so my property manager, all of my people are working from home, but my property manager drove every property, took a picture of every sign in every window that talked about posting new hours or if they closed or not, and is keeping a daily list up. But if you don't have property managers that can do that at your properties, having your porter or someone to give you to communicate, because I do think it's important 90 days from now or whenever we're back to normal, when did they close? What was the day that they closed? Your accountants are going to want to know that. Would never waive. I agree. Never waive 100%. Asphalt repairs, I always fix the potholes. Liability, fix the potholes. Someone said, am I still using dollars and cents from my Bible on occupancy cost? I still am, because it's the best thing I've been able to find. Larry has a lot of information on here. If you guys want to chat on his positions, he's a lawyer on some of these situations. Check his 540 comment, read that. But consult your lawyers, consult your insurance companies, and consult your lenders. Was this helpful? I hope this was helpful. Next week, I'm doing a webinar for CRM. because now some of your leasing agents have time to start using it. And I'm going to have 5 or 6 users talk about all of their different CRM products that they use, and I'll be posting that on LinkedIn. Thank you guys. Please be safe, and I hope this helped.